This rapidly approaching school year also presents a number of issues of concern for Washington Watch viewers and listeners. Is this going to be the first school year where schools in many states may be forced to abide by new regulations imposed by the Biden administration's radical Title IX rewrite, for example? That's the one where gender identity trumps biological sex. Well, that is going to be introduced in many places across the country, not to mention just plain student safety and fairness. Well, in states like Louisiana and Oklahoma, on the other hand, we're seeing pushback. In those states, we're seeing an effort to bring back much needed Judeo-Christian values and teachings back into the public square, the Ten Commandments and the Bible and so forth. So the left is up in arms over that. But why is one worldview acceptable while another is not? Why is their secular, woke, atheistic agenda even forced upon students and parents, while the other is not welcome at all? Well, joining me now to discuss this is David Barton. He's the founder and president of WallBuilders. David, always great to have you on Washington Watch, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Congressman. Good to be with you.
Well, listen, there's so much to talk about here. What a mess we've got, and what a battle. We have the Title IX rules on the one side. The other end of the spectrum, we've got the Ten Commandments in Louisiana. We've got teaching the Bible in Oklahoma. How much of this is maybe indicative of the type of school year we're going to have and some of the battles that we're facing across the country?
Well, this is indicative of the same worldview battles we've had for a long time. But what's happened is over the last 40 years of these kind of worldview battles, and much of this is engendered by the courts, quite frankly. It was the courts that said, well, that traditional religious stuff, you can't do that, but all the other religious stuff you can do. And so way back even in 1968, in the midst of the Vietnam War, the courts pointed out at that point in time that anything you believe so fervently that it affects your behavior, that's your religion. And so they actually identified a number of religions that didn't even have a belief in God, but again, they're worldviews that affect the way you behave. So under that concept, there's religion all over America. Progressives have their religion. They fervently believe in it, but we never hear separation church and state with them. As a matter of fact, with the new VP that Kamala Harris has picked, or Tim Walz says, he's very open out front about progressive worldviews and how we all need that. Now, if an evangelical Christian were to say that, if Trump were to say, hey, we all need evangelical Christian principles in schools, people would go crazy. So what's happened is they have successfully recompartmentalized faith in America to only mean Judeo-Christian faith, religious faith, Jews, Christians, evangelicals, etc. And that's never what it's meant, and that was never what it's designed to do. But they have done a good job of taking the platform out from under us. Now, on the other side, the court in the last 4 years has given America back more religious liberties than we've had in the last 60 years. Most people are not aware that right now you have 1,200 school districts with 200,000 kids that are taking the Bible as a credit course in public schools, and the Bible is the only textbook in the course. There's a lot of good stuff happening. We just don't hear that. And so what happens is, not hearing that, we get pushed back in the corners pretty easily now, and we just can't do that. We have to push back.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons that we have talked about this, and we want to continue doing it. I know, David, you for years, you've been talking about all the secularism, as you were just referencing, being pushed down our children's throats, while at the same time they call for separation of church and state, which just means anything Judeo-Christian at all. But you've been saying, why is there a call for separation of Christian values, but not a call for separation of secular, woke, atheistic values? Have you ever gotten an answer for that question?
No, it is always the personal preference of the people involved. And what you find is the more secular you are, the less biblical you are, the more intolerant you are. And so these guys, when they get control, absolutely don't want any discussion. It is interesting that in the name of separation of church and state, they've eliminated much history. You can't even tell a lot of the history anymore, because if you did, it would be highly Judeo-Christian. I mean, the fact that our founding fathers had called for 1,400 prayer proclamations to God by 1815, and you're going to tell me they're atheists, agnostics, deists? The only way you can believe that is if you haven't been taught history. And they've done a great job in their worldview of eliminating actual historical facts that are part of what happened. Even the University of Houston points out the single most cited source when our founding fathers wrote the Declaration and Constitution was the Bible. They cited it in 34% of their references. You can't say that in schools today. That violates separation of church and state. So what's happened is because of their version of separation of church and state, we don't even know our own history anymore. And that's where we end up getting talked in the corners. And hopefully all these new people getting elected to school boards, they're starting to push back on that and say, no. This is actual history. This is truth. We're going to teach history. And by the way, this is a system that's the freest system in the history of the world, has the most prosperity, has everything good about this. And you don't want to promote this. You don't want to talk about this. So there is a change that's happening right now. But literally, we're at a point now where most people don't even know the history of their own company, of their own country, because we've been told separation of church and state, and that's been applied even to historical education.
Wow, it certainly has. And we find ourselves behind the eight ball now, in spite of the fact, as you said, that we have some incredibly important rulings from the courts that have given us literally back a lot of those freedoms that we haven't had in decades. And we've got to educate people and take advantage of those things. One of the issues, I wanted to bring this up to you as an illustration, but of course the Biden-Harris administration is now promoting the use of controversial meditation, yoga, mindfulness techniques, they call it, all sorts of stuff derived from Buddhism and Hinduism, and they're wanting to interject all this into public school. And somehow this is coming from a CDC plan. But what do we make of this? I mean, this goes back to what you've been asking for years. Why the separation call for Judeo-Christian values and principles, but no problem with it if we're going to interject Buddhism, Hinduism, or whatever other ism into the schools, no problem. What do we make of this secularized form of non-Christian religion being introduced into the schools?
People will advance their worldview. This is what they believe. If it's anti-Christian or non-Christian, they're going to promote it. And the fact is, myself individually, I'm a firm believer that the Bible teaches a free market system where you have competition. You know, a lot of Christians have in their home the plaque that says, "As for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord." Joshua 24:15, great verse, but read what's above it. Joshua said, "Hey guys, you have a choice now. We're going to the promised land. You can serve the gods of the Egyptians from whom you left. You can serve the gods of the Amorites in whose land we're about to go. But as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord." We had competition. Make your choice. The same with Elijah. If you want to see who's God, we'll let prophets of Baal and false prophets, 850 of them, have all the time they want to promote their faith, and then let me have my shot at it. And so when you put it on a free market, people have a right to choose. So I'm not saying that you can't have any other religion taught in schools, not at all. But if you're going to have any other religion, make sure you also have Christianity as a competitor in there. Make sure you have that biblical faith. I'm not scared of losing that battle at all. I firmly believe that if we present the Christian faith, if they want to do Eastern meditation, go for it. Just let us have prayer meetings and classes as well. If you're going to have classes doing Eastern meditation, let's have prayer meetings, reading the Bible and praying to Jesus. I don't mind free market competition. They don't like the free market, which is, by the way, why they're socialists, because they don't like the free market in economics or in religion, either one.
Absolutely. All right, David, we only got about a minute or so left, but what advice would you give to parents, grandparents of students today as we begin this new year?
It's a new world. I would point to Proverbs 21:22. A wise man attacks the city of the mighty. Because of decisions we've had from the courts in the last 5 years, and I mean dozens of them. You mentioned Title IX, that is now passed in 17 states, 27 states have introduced it, and the courts have upheld it. Every federal court has upheld that there are two genders. We need to be offensive with that. We've been given religious liberties back in a number of cases. We need to be offensive with that. Don't let the administration say you can't do this. Yes, we can. There are a number of groups that will defend you for free that love this stuff. They won the cases at the U.S. Supreme Court. They'll win them for you. We just have to be offensive minded, not let them push us into a corner. We need to have the same rights that they give their kids and everyone else in the nation. And
show up at the school board meetings, be engaged in what's happening in the school. Right. David Barton, always an honor to have you. I will say we raised our daughters on the information of you and WallBuilders, and I will never forget you being the very first person to endorse me for Congress. I'll forever be grateful for that. So thank you. Thank you for joining us on Washington Watch.
God bless you, Jody. Bless you, man.